What's going on, Washington Commanders Nation? It's your boy Rio Robinson back with the latest and greatest on the Rambling with Rio YouTube channel, where we ramble about the Washington Commanders. It was a wacky, dirty W on Sunday, but boy, have we come a long way in a year where we could complain and nitpick how a victory happened. So, it's Victory Tuesday. I had to get my guy Lake Lewis Jr. on the channel to give me all of his thoughts, snapshot reactions, and what was the vibes like from the press box down in the Big Easy. How you doing this morning, Lake?
Hey, what's going on, Rio? Good to see you, man. Happy holidays.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you as well. The team is in the middle of a playoff push in the final 4 weeks of the season. You wouldn't think so, the way that they wanted to desperately give the Saints the game on Sunday. Coming out of it once the clock hit zero, what were your initial thoughts?
It was a game that, even though it came down to, a botched 2-point conversion by the Saints to get the win, I still feel like Washington was clearly the superior football team. Mm-hmm. The problem with that statement is they didn't show it for the majority of the game. I mean, and I say that because this was easily a winnable football game that they should have destroyed New Orleans. New Orleans was basically gifting them the game. I mean, they even went to their backup quarterback, who at some point between the two quarterbacks who played for New Orleans, Rio, were a third-string quarterback at some point during the season. Washington should have steamrolled these guys, but you and I both know getting W's in the NFL is a tough task. And doing it on the road is equally tough. So they survived. I mean, the referees tried to help New Orleans at the end of the game. It didn't work. So if you're Washington, you get out of New Orleans, no harm, no foul, but you can't play that Sunday against Philadelphia.
While we're trying to shake the term frauds and situations and narratives such as games like Sunday don't necessarily help your case, but you look around the league, the Chiefs win like this all the time. The Eagles win like this a lot. A lot of good teams win like this, but Washington's in a different place because we're in year one. We're trying to identify and learn even how to win. 9th win of the season. It's the 9th time we've had a victory pod this year, but I don't like to spend too much time on referees, but let's start there. The clock froze for a while. And did y'all notice that, or were y'all just paying? Did y'all notice that immediately from the box?
Yeah, you could see it. It froze for about 4 seconds. Maybe if you really want to hard count, maybe 3.5 seconds. But at the end of the day, when you look at when New Orleans spiked the ball, there's 3 seconds left. Shouldn't have been a situation like that. The game should have been over. But then again, you don't want to put it on the referees. I mean, they botched the call, but Washington botched some plays, that enabled New Orleans to be in that situation where they shouldn't have been in the first place. So you can't put this one on the refs. Now, if Washington were to have lost the game on that final 2-point conversion, now we having a whole nother conversation. But for the league, the refereeing has been pretty bad, consistently all year. And they've got to figure a way to fix it and get it right. Because it seems like instant replay doesn't matter anymore. I mean, we're seeing obvious calls that instant replay confirms, and yet the referees still are making a different call. So those are things that have to be cleaned up, because people are already questioning the integrity of the game, especially when, I could get in big trouble for saying this, but especially when your main network and stuff like that's promoting FanDuel and DraftKings, and then you see some of the stuff going on the field, it starts to make that fan that is already a conspiracy theorist, Rio, it starts to make them wonder, are the referees involved in some things?
Yep, the fans with the tinfoil caps on, they're looking at it with a magnifying glass, like, what's going on there? But that's why you do not leave games up for the zebras. You not leave games to the guys with the Foot Locker shirts on. And Washington did a lot in that second half to give the Saints a chance to possibly win the game. They scored the game-tying touchdown, or at least you thought so. They went for the win instead of the tie, which I expected them to do with an interim coach with nothing really to lose and all the more the gain. I expected that. But we'll work our way into how we got there. Let's start with some good from Sunday afternoon. Marshon Lattimore made his Washington Commanders debut. It relegated certain corner to the bench for most of the game, and Marshon was not tried or targeted one time. I can't remember having a cornerback that respected in a game since like Champ Bailey, man. Talk to me about Marshon.
Yeah, I mean, he's as advertised. I mean, you just don't throw at him. And naturally, the Saints, who he was traded from, they know his game, they know his tendencies, and they knew not to throw the football his way. And they didn't. They didn't run a play where the quarterback's head was even facing that direction of the field from the
Right.
snap. It was everything was to the right side of the field. Wherever he wasn't, wherever he was, they went the other way. If you're Washington, you have to feel great about this. You saw Adam Peters, after the game, big bear hug on him coming off the field. This guy's a difference maker. And if you weren't sure of that, if you weren't really sure of this guy's game, which we've tried to tell you all season long, when he comes out on the field, he's a dog. He's a difference maker. He's an alpha. And that's what you saw. You saw a lockdown corner that literally neutralized half of a football field. And more importantly, made the secondary settle in so much so that Mikey Samerstill, who is the legit starter opposite him on the other side of the field, had a pick. Those are things that you want to see. And that's always because you have a great player on the field, makes everyone step their games up too.
Yep. Thank you, team, for putting Mikey opposite him, putting Noah in that slot. Benjamin St. Juste only played a few snaps on Sunday, still made his presence felt, not necessarily in a positive way. He only got on the field for less than a handful of snaps, and a huge penalty extended a drive and gave the Saints the chance to tie the game up or potentially win it. Like, it's just the reputation that Benji has at this point. He's not going to be able to get away with anything when his hands are on a wide receiver.
No, he's not. I mean, he's known to be grabby, and he's a physical corner against receivers. But sometimes those calls will come, and you're right. He has a reputation now, so anytime he puts his hands on anyone, they're going to call it. But in that situation, it was a hands to the face, and you could see it. I mean, it was pretty much face mask that they called. Yeah, so you have to make those calls, and especially against a guy that has a reputation. And it came at an inopportune time at the end of the day. So those are things that you have to clean up. If you're Benji, you're not going to get on the field if you don't clean those things up, because right now, as we said, you have Marshon as your number one. Your CB2 is Mikey Samerstill, and then your CB3 is Noah, underneath. And I think for my money, I think that the way Benji's going to get on the field outside of nickel coverages is I think he has to start to play underneath. And I know that there was a time in his career where they briefly tried that, but I do think that if you're a grabby, rangy corner, maybe he's not the most elusive and quick twitched guy. He's kind of stiff, but still, if you're long, rangy, and you're grabby, maybe underneath might be the best place for him in order to be able to get on the field consistently.
Yep. And Sanders still opposite Marshon, catches his second interception, the team lead in interception. Should have had two on Sunday because he dropped one later in the game, but he did a lot of good. There was also some bad mixed in there, still growing pains of a rookie. But it seems like we have our cornerback room. We have it stacked up how we wanted to see it once we traded for Marshon. And I'm excited to see more 23. He didn't have much to say when they gave him the game ball. He doesn't say much. He didn't say much in his media scrum with y'all the other day. He is about that action. He is about getting on that field, and he seems like a communicator. You can see him talking to guys on the defense, and his body language, it just looks different when 23 is out there.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look after the game and see all the Saints coaches and players coming over to him, and there's a lot of love there, and so they know what type of guy this guy is, and I think Washington figured that out real early. That his first couple practices out there, he was showing Benji St. Juste things, he was showing Mikey Samerstill some things, so he's not a guy that's, although he doesn't speak much to us in the media, it's not like he carries that onto the field where he doesn't speak to his teammates. He's actually polar opposite on the field. He's a lot of talk. And he will talk to your best receiver too. So you can't help but want a player like that in your locker room. I mean, he's a lead by example guy, and he's new. He knows that this isn't his team, but I guarantee you, they know who he is as far as his game. And I'm sure by at this point next year, there's no doubt in my mind they're re-signing this guy to a long-term deal. I'm sure by next year you'll see a little bit more of that vocalness in public, and also, with the team. But he's new right now. He just wants to play football and shut people down.
Yep, and I'm not mad at that at all.
Nope.
Definitely looking forward to see a lot more Marshon Lattimore going forward. There was another reunion in Louisiana on Sunday. Jayden Daniels returns to the Bayou for the first time since its Heisman Trophy winning season. He didn't disappoint. He had a very catch-22 type of day, 25 for 31, 223, 2 touchdowns, no picks, despite the fact that defense was on his ass the entire game. Like the defensive line, extra rusher, Jayden at times was running for his life. Starts the game off hot. The first touchdown of the game was exactly why you drafted him. That was a snapshot of just how elite a playmaker this guy is. Scrambles, scramble drill, almost drops the ball, shakes Brian Bresee, and throws a dart to Terry in the end zone. The second touchdown gets through all of his progressions and finds Terry coming across the field. My biggest thing when Noah Brown went down wasn't necessarily who steps up in his place. It was find more ways to give the ball to number 17. And that 5-17 connection has been crazy, man.
It has, and they left some meat on the bone too.
Oh my God, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I mean, those plays. It seems like Terry and Jayden have mastered the hard routes, the hard catches, the hard throws in traffic, and the timing is there underneath and all those things. But that deep ball, they've got to tighten that up, because they left 2 out there, and those are 2 to blow this game open.
3.
Yeah.
It was 3 of them.
It was 3. It was 3. It was well, I say one was clearly on Jayden, 2 was on Terry. So, they've got to tighten that up, and I'm sure that comes with time. Some people think the deep ball is the easiest route to throw in the tree, and it's actually not, because it's a timing route. You don't have a lot of time, and in a game like this, you just said it yourself, New Orleans was on top of Jayden from the snap.
Timing was off because they was in his face. Yeah.
They were. I mean, he just didn't have a lot of time to gather himself and let the play develop and then make the throw. So he kind of rushed those throws, and you can see they were flat throws. They weren't even, there was no air under the balls. They were just threw them out there, and Terry couldn't run those down. So those are things, those are good problems to have. I'm just happy that they're going deep, that they're throwing the ball deep, because what that does is it backs up your defense and allows you to be able to run the football, which they were able to do. However, they didn't do it enough, from my opinion. I thought that they kind of abandoned the run at times, and that could have been a staple in the game, because they were able to run the football.
Yeah, I think they abandoned it a little bit, because inside the tackles, we could not run the ball much of any. And most of the effective rushing yards we were getting were from 5. They were from Jayden Daniels escaping pressure, eluding sacks, and making things happen with his legs. I'm very excited that he's very confident in his health and his running ability again, because during that stretch we had where we were losing, he wasn't very confidently running the ball. He's not waiting for it now. If he doesn't see it, he goes. And that's what kept this offense moving the chains earlier on in the season. Terry McLaurin, what a year he's having. He should already be at 1,000 yards, but we didn't hit on those big plays. He would have had his career day. I've been saying for weeks, man,
it's coming.
It's a travesty that Terry doesn't have a 150-yard game in his career. That man would have been well over 200, 4 or 5 touchdowns on Sunday. It could have been a great time, but he did finish with 2 first-half touchdowns, 73 yards. He's 31 yards shy of 1,000 on the season. He's one off the single-season franchise record for touchdown catches, 2 away from breaking it. It feels good to talk about this, because you remember the conversations that we had earlier on in the season. And if you were listening with objective football fan ears and put the pom-poms down. This is what we wanted from Terry. This is what we wanted to see from Terry. Him making plays, separating, and once he's targeted, making things count. He is looking like that alpha number one that we've been waiting to see.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad you brought this up because people still try to remind me, and let me just remind you guys, I'm cool with Terry. When I'm in the locker room with this guy all the time, and we talk about Ohio State, we talk about Penn State. I mean, everything's cool, man. Like, this guy knew what we were saying. He didn't take that to heart, like we were saying he was a scrub, he was a bum. No, we were saying he's a Pro Bowler, but now we want to see him enter into that top 5 receiver conversation. And we also said that he hadn't had the guy getting him the ball to be entered into that top 5 wide receiver conversation, and now he does. And we wanted to see, could he elevate his game even further? And he's answered the question that yes, he has. Now, I'll say this still. I want him to make more catches with these hands too.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. A lot of the problems lie there when he can't catch it with his forearms or his chest. That's where we have issues sometimes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Terry makes all the catches, all the tough catches. And he's a body catcher. He just is. That's what he does. That's what he excels at.
He's elite at it.
He's elite. He's probably the best receiver in the NFL catching with his body. He catches anything in the catch radius near him with his body, his arms and his chest. But now we want to see, when you're running down the sidelines, it's just something that you can tell that's the next phase of his game that could push him into the top 3 or 4. I mean, legitimately. We know Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are 1 and 2. I mean,
always easy.
They're always. There's no debating that. But when you start talking about 3 and 4 and 5, and people mention the CeeDee Lambs, well, I'm taking Terry over CeeDee Lamb personally.
This season.
This season, I absolutely am. And because of who his quarterback is, I'm taking them long term now, because I think the upside in Washington with Terry and Jayden is far more superior than most quarterbacks with their number 1 receiver outside of hence 1 and 2. So, you have to understand that with this guy, he's done it all. He's done it all with multiple quarterbacks. Some quarterbacks just aren't good. He's done it with. And now to see him take that step this season, it's clearly because he's got an alpha quarterback now. And it's going to get better when he gets some more help out there at wide receiver, through the draft, through free agency. It's going to happen, just time developing more of that deep route precision with Jayden. So, yeah, man, I mean, I feel like we've been vindicated because everything we talked about has come true.
Yep, and we're never going to be afraid to have fleshed out objective conversation over here. I promise you, some feelings getting hurt from some pom-pom pick me waving fans is not going to stop us from having these conversations over here. And I will say, I think CeeDee Lamb stretches out for that first deep ball, and I think he goes up on that third one and comes down with it. But
Terry, he's not running over the middle though. With conviction.
Oh yeah. He's not.
And Terry does.
I love Terry, and it's never an insult or never supposed to be facetious when I call him the body catch bandit. It's just what he is and what he does.
He's a body catcher, man.
And he is phenomenal at doing it with his forearms and with his chest and all that stuff. But Terry's having a year. We have to get him that record. We have to get him 13 touchdowns. He's at 11. This is his first season with double-digit touchdowns in his career. It's crazy how fast the difference comes when he actually has a quarterback that can get him the football, when they can actually get this deep ball. See, the thing is, I'm not concerned with that because Jayden, his deep ball is one of his weapons. It's one of his weapons, absolutely. And that go ball to Terry is always going to be a thing. Another factor I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, those deep balls were all with Terry lined up to the right. He's used to hitting Terry deep on the left. They're finally moving him around because Cliff finally heard us. But
and the other thing that people aren't talking about is the fact that they worked. I mean, they were there to be had. Yep. We hadn't seen that a lot earlier.
Great play calls too.
Those were really good play calls. They just needed the execution to be tighter. But, for everyone that says Cliff's offense goes into the tank in the second half of the season, not necessarily. That's not the case. I mean, they had plays to be made. They had 20 points in the game. Realistically, they should have had over 30 points in this football game. I mean, they missed 2 field goals. They missed 2 deep balls. They could have been well into the 30s if everything was correct.
Yep. And Cliff dialed it up. Despite the fact, like, I remember the first deep ball, it came at a time I was live on my channel. I literally just said the words. See, this is normally where I would take a shot off of play action, but we have no run game to sell play action, and
Right.
Jayden may not have the time for it. All of a sudden, Jayden's throwing a bomb down the field. He called up 3 bombs in the midst of us being pressured and him not having time to complete a drop, and they all worked. We just didn't execute on the play. So we got to let off his situational awareness at time does need to be called to question, because no bigger indictment was when we were at 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line. 1-yard line. We didn't run Brian Robinson one time, and we run a play action boot pass on 3rd and 1. Did you notice that when they stopped selling on the run, they didn't even care about the fake? They were just taking beeline straight to Jayden.
That's exactly what they were doing. I mean, and again, you don't question, these guys are pros for a reason. Cliff's great offensive mind. But I was shocked at that. I'm like, you got a guy that's a sledgehammer that's been working hard, been stuffed a lot during the game. Get him an opportunity to just get in there, make him feel good. And I just think that sometimes those are the plays that I'm sure the coaches are looking at Rio and saying, I wish I had that one back. I probably would have called something different. But the saving grace is when you have a number 5 and you have a guy that can move around and make some things happen, hence the first touchdown pass. That looked like Lamar Jackson against Cincinnati from a couple of weeks ago, where, he slipped, he was down. Most quarterbacks, the play is over. But when you have those kind of difference makers, you can do that. But you don't want to get in the habit of leaning on them too much. Sometimes turn the ball around and hand it off to your running back and get the yard you need.
Yep, it's astounding, man. Washington dominates in time of possession. The Saints didn't even have the ball for 20 minutes in the game. It was 40 and some change minutes to 19 minutes and some change. You dominate time of possession 40 something to 19. You make these superhero-like plays early on. You go up 14-0, you go into the half 14-0. Defense dominates the first quarterback they see, and then the game goes to absolute hell in the second half, and we have to sit back for the 1,000th time and watch this team hold on by the hair on their chinny chin chin. Didn't you just knew this was going to come down to a touchdown and a 2-point conversion? Didn't you just see it playing out in front of you?
I absolutely did. And I'm going to tell you, when I knew something in my mind could change drastically, it was when Haener went out and Spencer Rattler came in. I knew right there, because no offense to the young man who started the game for New Orleans, but he was bad. And he was tragic during the game. I'm not going to say he's like that every night, every day, but on Sunday he was tragic. I knew Rattler could come in and make some things happen because he's more of a quick decision maker, and he's just a better quarterback. I'm surprised he didn't even start, once Derek Carr was out. So you knew that changed the way the defense would be prepared, because they didn't fear Haener at all. I mean, they just absolutely didn't. He was doing nothing. He was throwing moon balls up for everyone to have.
And walking in the sacks.
Absolutely. He just looked like he didn't belong out on the field, honestly. But then when Rattler came in, you saw, some arm strength. You saw quick decision making. You just saw a more fluid offense start to develop. And then Valdez-Scantling started to get involved in the game. I mean, those are the things that you were expecting from the beginning that didn't happen. So I don't know if it was a combination of Washington taking their foot off the gas, feeling comfortable with what the offense was able to do. But you just can't have that. You have to learn how to close teams out. And you've proven that you can do that. There have been so many games, especially home games, where games were over at halftime. So when you playing these bad teams, you got to take them out of their misery because they don't want to play football, man. These guys are ready for their vacations. Bad teams, and you have to just jump on them, and they did. They were up 14-0 and looked like this was going to be really ugly. But when that change was made at quarterback, I said two things can happen. It could snowball and get uglier, or they could get some life. And if you're Washington, you got to cut that water off, and they didn't. And you just saw it, as you said. New Orleans kept picking away, chipping away, and then that final drive for Washington, that was not good. And I knew this was going to be a problem.
Yep, knew it was going to be a problem.
4-yard or missed field goal, you don't do that. I'm sorry. Punt.
What the fuck? You got this new guy here, 7th kicker of the season. My God, the carousel at kicker is going to make me pull my hair out at some point. The biggest concern offensively I had before we transition to the defensive side of the ball, the offensive line. They definitely looked like they missed their leader on Sunday. Tyler Biadasz was out with an illness, and boy, you could tell that Tyler Biadasz was out. Michael Dieter, he had a rough outing on Sunday. Nick Allegretti, rough outing on Sunday. Both our tackles. That defensive line was rejuvenated. We made Chase Young look like he was coming out of Ohio State again. 2 sacks, getting hurries, pressures. He didn't look like a guy that only had 3.5 sacks on the season coming into the game. John Ridgeway was getting active. Cam Jordan, Saints legend, baller. He hasn't been good. He hasn't done anything production-wise in quite some time. We were just giving him free rushes to the quarterback, and they stopped selling on the play action. They were just running right past the play action, going straight to the quarterback because we had no established run game going. The offensive line, how concerned are you going forward? Because we got a really good defensive front that we got to deal with on Sunday versus the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need all their pieces back. And I think over the past several weeks, several games, it's been a mixed match unit because of the injuries. At one point, Andrew Wiley was out. Coleman was out with the concussion. Cornelius Lucas is out. I mean, so they haven't had the unit that was, consistently lining up early in the season together, where they were building momentum and picking up steam and being recognized as one of the better offensive lines this season. But it hasn't been the case over the past month. And you would think with the bye week and then the mini bye week that they had even before that it would just be enough to get these guys back in unison and in sync. And it hasn't happened. But they're going to need that down the stretch. I mean, the fact that Andrew Wiley was back out there is a good sign, but obviously you need Biadasz in the middle of the field, as your center, your anchor, because he's a great play caller as well, as far as the offensive assignments. And he's physical, and I think he and Jayden have a really good rapport too. So, I don't want to throw Dieter under the bus. I mean, he did struggle at times. He did okay at times too, but he's not Biadasz at all. And if you're Washington, you need to get your offensive line. You need to get your 5 stable guys out there. And it does seem like, I don't know if he's hitting a rookie wall, but it does seem like Coleman's, battling through things as well. And he's not playing at the level he was playing when he and Cornelius Lucas were platooning. So, they've got to figure some things out here.
Is Coleman do you think he's the long-term solution at tackle, or is he what we have for right now?
No, I do. I think he can be. I really do. I think at some point during the season, before the injuries kind of got to him, he was playing really good football. I mean, he was holding his own against some Pro Bowl, caliber defensive ends. So no, he's definitely a really great young prospect, and I do think he's the long-term answer at left tackle. I think he's the starting left tackle right now for a reason. And I know when Cornelius Lucas got hurt, Rio, although he was playing some of his best football of his time in Washington, I still felt like, Coleman was just that guy and should just play every snap, every rep, get every rep. But I do think they are kind of missing that platoon right now because Lucas was playing well, and what he has as a veteran, maybe Lucas, is developing and seeing those things now.
Yeah, it was just a bad day for us Sunday. Even Cosme was getting whooped consistently up front. Tyler Biadasz is the heartbeat of that room. That's the best lineman this season for this team. Get well soon because we need you out there come Sunday, because Jalen Carter and company are coming to town, and that Eagles D line, we saw it last time on Thursday Night Football, just how crazy that D line can be when they're clicking on all cylinders. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about Philly later in the show and later in the week. The defensive side of the ball. You blink a team for a half. You have Jake Hayner running around with it like a deer in headlights. He's walking into sacks. He's throwing picks. He should have thrown multiple picks. We dropped a couple of those things. And then Rattler comes in, and the entire mood of the game changes. It's like you did no homework or any thought into the idea that he could come into the game. There was a very not wise not accepting of a penalty when Rattler came in the game. I believe on second down, there was a penalty. It was a holding call. We declined it, and instead of instead of second and 20,
Deep in your territory. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they should have taken the penalty. I mean, and I understand the analytics side of it,
Yep.
but that's putting a little bit too much confidence in your defense, who was starting to show signs of trouble, to say the least. So I was surprised by that one, Rio, for sure.
Oh yeah. So you don't take the penalty, then they only have to go 10 yards instead of 20. They get those yards, they get momentum for the first time in the entire game.
Yeah.
They start to put together a sustained drive. Rattler hits a deep ball that should have been intercepted by Jeremy Chin, if we're being honest. Another wacky Looney Tunes type play. A lot of wacky stuff went on Sunday. It was a very weird watch for 60 minutes. And then they run the trick play that Cliff Kingsbury been trying to hit all season, the wide receiver screen throwback play. And Alvin Kamara, the only real weapon on the field Washington needs to be concerned with, streaking wide open up the right side. And then all of a sudden, you've got a football game.
Yeah, that should never happen, because one thing about Alvin Kamara is that he's probably the best pass catching running back in the NFL still to this very day.
Yep.
And you just knew the way the play was set up on the far left hash mark. I mean, on the left side, the way they ran the play, it was nothing but green pastures on the right hand side, and that's where he went. And he got caught up with Frankie Louvu, and you could see that Quan Martin was late to react to try to get back over there. It was kind of like a crossing route that caught him up. It was a great play call, frankly, but if you're Washington, you can't let the one true weapon on that offense be left on an island by himself with the linebacker.
You can't let a running back with 70 catches
No.
be streaking up. So, like, someone has to stay home, because a desperate team is going to do desperate things. And you have to check for plays like that, because they do exist. I hated how easy that was. And then he makes
we got to give him credit, though, Rio, because he did have a great one-hand catch with it, though.
He did, and he got his feet
in. Yeah, so sometimes things like that happen. Frankie was there. It wasn't like he was just totally out of position, but that was a hell of a catch too. But yeah, I'm bumping him or something, keep him from making a route.
Hell of a throw by Cedric Wilson too, because that's a lot as a receiver to be asked to throw it all the way across the field to the pylon like that. That throw looked better than some of the quarterbacks I've seen coming through this building. But they get momentum on that drive, and it felt like, even though Rattler was 10 of 21 for 135, he felt very much in control. He felt comfortable. All of a sudden, all the pressure from Dorrance Armstrong, Frankie Louvu, Deron Payne and company in the first half, we're all of a sudden not getting that once Rattler comes in the game. You just could tell that someone who had a better feel for what they wanted to do offensively, it changed. There was a shift when he came in the game. But Derek Forrest, fans have been begging for weeks for Derek Forrest to come in at safety, and you got more than one reasons of opportunity to see why he's been in the coach's doghouse this season.
Yeah, was just late to react on everything. And everyone knows this guy's a big hitter, but as far as coverage, that's not his game. And that's been an Achilles for this team pretty much all year. They've got a lot of big hitters. They've got a lot of great tacklers, but with an eye for the ball, an eye to be able to track a football, that's the part that's lacking in their secondary. And I think Mikey Samuel and now obviously Marshon Lattimore, your two corners have it, but your safeties and Jeremy Quinn, who's having a Pro Bowl season, if you ask me, and Quan Martin, those guys are smart, heady players, but they're not ball trackers. They're
Nope.
just not. You saw that on what you said earlier. Should have been an interception. Jeremy's supposed to get that,
That play was weird, man.
Absolutely, but that's just not their strength. And I'm sure they're going to address that in the offseason, get some guys that can track the ball as well. But yeah, Derek Forrest, that's not his game. And you saw him out of position several times. You don't know if it's rust or if it is what it is. And maybe you're right. That's why he hasn't played much and he's been, inactive for most of the season as far as games. So, yeah. I mean, looked a little slow out there for sure, to say the least.
Very. And he hit. There was the play where he hit Jeremy Chin and he hurt Scantling and Jeremy Chin on the
Same
play.
time.
Man. So what is the safety rotation if Chin has to miss time with the concussion?
Percy. I mean, you got to go there. If you have
Percy and Quan.
Percy and Quan, got to go there. I don't even think that's. I don't even think that's for debate. Percy's played well this year. He really has. And I know Coach Witt loves the guy. Loves his tenacity. He's smart. Percy's played multiple positions. So that's the other thing. He's a smart guy. He will come up and hit you, but I do think from a ball tracking ability, he can do that actually. He's a guy maybe not at the upper echelon levels of a Pro Bowl safety in tracking a ball, but he can do it better than most at that position on this roster. And I think you'll see that if that's where they have to go against the Eagles.
Yeah, because he has the speed too. He takes some of the oddest angles to make tackles sometimes, but he does have the speed and athleticism to do so. I'm really hoping we don't have to miss any time from Jeremy Chin though, because Lord knows we need Chin on that field when the Eagles come to town this weekend. It's gonna be a long day without Jeremy Chin versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm hoping him and Zach Ertz are able to go. Ertz was someone I forgot to mention. Beautiful one-handed catch, and that was the last we saw of him. I hope both of these guys are good to go and they're able to get through the concussion protocol, but it's getting stricter this year with the concussion protocol, and it's a 5-day process. So we're not really going to have a true update on that till around Friday, which is the final practice of the week. But Frankie Louvu, I feel like early on, they were like experimenting coming out with the bye. Did you notice Michael Walker was on the field a lot more than usual?
I did, and I noticed it from the very first play. It just was like,
why is Michael Walker?
Michael Walker's getting a lot of run today.
Yeah, I was confused.
The first series, it was a surprise to me, and I'm like, can we just get back to what's been working, man? I'll be honest with you. I started looking for Bobby Wagner, like, is something wrong with Bobby that Michael Walker's out here? Because I saw Frankie, of course, and I'm just like thinking, what the heck's going on? So maybe they saw something that we didn't, but you saw how that played out. And they
was weird.
Quick.
It felt like we were trying out new recipes coming out of the bye week. I'm seeing Jordan McGee more than I've seen him before. I'm seeing Michael Walker. Things offensively changed up a little bit. I'm like, okay, we're coming out of the bye. We're trying to give some guy. Defoe was out there even before Jeremy Chin got hurt. They were trying some new things, but we got back to what we know. Not the most active game from Frankie Louvu, but you see the difference he makes when we line him up off that edge. He had to be more of a linebacker on Sunday. I seen him in coverage a lot more and doing off-ball linebacker things, but Dorrance Armstrong, it's been a minute, but he was active. He was back there. I thought he had 2 sacks during the broadcast. They divvy up sacks. Yep, they called one back because of the flag. And we got a couple crazy penalties. Dante Fowler for roughing the pass. I don't know what roughing the passer is anymore, but it is nice to see our edge rushers were starting to get home again.
Yeah, no. Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler were making a difference out there. The penalty on Dante, it was the correct call because unfortunately he didn't mean to, but his hands got up,
around his neck.
got around his neck and head. So yeah,
Mhm.
they're going to call that every time. But clearly there was no malice or anything like that. Even on the hit, he almost basically pulled up. I mean, so he wasn't really trying to go there, but you got to make that call. But in Dorrance's case, that's the guy that they brought in from Dallas, to do what he does. And you remember in the summer, I predicted that he was going to surpass the sack total that he had last year in Dallas because he's going to have more reps. I
Yep.
think last year he had 8.5 sacks in Dallas, and these 2 sacks that he got, on Sunday put him right there, to pass that number. So they're going to need that, especially in these last final 3 games, because trying to make these playoffs, man, you need everybody to step up and give you that production against the Eagles, against the Falcons, and then naturally against the Cowboys. These are all going to be tough football games because they're all playing for something.
You're all playing for something. Frankie Luvu, I need you to catch that interception, man. That interception changes the ball game.
It
How
does.
many weeks do we have to? How many weeks do we have to go through seeing guys almost catch interceptions? How many times do we have to see drops from guys when it comes to the ball? I know defensive players aren't supposed to have stickum on their hands, but my goodness, man, these are game-changing plays where we're dropping picks.
We've seen it all year long. I mean, we it goes back to even remember Fedarian Mathis had the bobble that basically hugged himself and
Mhm.
missed the ball.
Yep.
It's just that I think what we're really seeing, Rio, at the end of the day is really good football players on their defense, great energy guys, hard hitters, determined guys. But from the skill set standpoint of, like I said, seeing, tracking, pulling in ball, that's just not most of these guys.
Nope.
And that's got to be something that they're going to have to, add to the mix for next year. Frankie's having a Pro Bowl season. He
He is.
really is. But those are the type of plays you got to get them, especially in a game that's starting to become a little too close for comfort.
Yep. Way too close for comfort. We got to start catching those things, man. I was looking at a stat this weekend about the Houston Texans defense, and it made me feel like we're playing a different sport. They've caught 17 interceptions this year,
Bro, and that's not all by corners and second and safeties. It's by
bro.
linebackers. I think they got a defensive tackle got one. I mean, they're hunting the football. That's what they're
Mhm.
doing.
They have 2 guys with 5 picks late. What the
That,
hell, bro?
that's insane, man. That's insane. And see, that's what you want. That's what you want. If you're Washington now, you're gonna. If you're Mikey Samerstill, I actually was on another pod last week, and I said Mikey Samerstill is going to get a pick in this football game,
Mhm.
and the guy's like, you think so? And I said, yeah, man, because they're not going to throw at 23 at all. So now, if you're one of these guys in the secondary for Washington, or even a linebacker,
Mhm.
you got opportunities coming your way, man, because Lattimore is going to neutralize a whole half of a field.
Oh,
So
but
now you can shrink the field down to be able to make plays, all throughout. And I think that that's going to have to be the next, maturation process for this defense.
yep. And Mikey, it's okay. You could catch picks as a rookie. You caught one. You almost had another one. You dropped one in a couple weeks before. You can catch as many picks as you like to. Kalen Bullock has 5 picks for the Texans, and Kamari Lassiter has 3. That's 8 between 2 rookies.
Rookies.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna get your targets now that we have Marshon here, and y'all got y'all work cut out for you with the Philadelphia Eagles coming up. Very dirty victory, but what's most important, Washington came out victorious. Like I made an analogy after the game Sunday. It felt like surviving a horror movie, but all your friends died. Like it felt dirty. Like it felt like you made it, but it didn't feel right at the end of the day.
It felt like the Giants game up in New York. It was very similar. It was,
Mhm.
the Giants game in New York, the game was never in question, even though they scored on that tight end seam route to cut it to 7. You knew the game still was they had no shot to win the game.
Mhm.
This game with New Orleans was a little, too close for comfort down the stretch. But
Very.
you can just see that Washington was the better football team. But the question is, do they know that? And that's the problem that I'm having right now is You know, if you go back even to the Steelers loss by 1 point, the Eagles lost where you're up 10-6 in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, these are all winnable games that you have to find a way to win. You have to close them out. And I think that that's just a progression of a team that won 4 games last year. They're just not used to winning games. And now you have this mixture of different talented players. Some came from good situations like Jayden in college, and some came from bad situations like Frankie Louvu in Carolina. So they're trying to collectively find a way to say, we know how to win. Kind of like how Kansas City, they win ugly and they do this every week, but yet people are still saying that they'll be shocked if Kansas City wins another Super Bowl.
They
Why?
shouldn't be. They
This is
shouldn't
what
be.
they do. That's what they're used to doing. So Washington has to find what they're used to doing in order to win these games.
Yep, they haven't flipped the switch yet. And for
Yeah.
those that say, but Washington wins that way, why don't we get treated like Kansas City? They've won 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years, and they're working on the first NFL three-peat right now, and they haven't even flipped that switch yet and only have 1 loss on the season. So that is why we are viewed narratively differently than the Kansas City Chiefs. You're around the team during the week. You get the media part of practice. Is Jonathan Allen actually going to make a return this year?
I mean, there's a chance that he could. Don't get me in trouble, man. But I mean, there's a chance that he could. And let's face it, if you can get him back on the field, why wouldn't you? Let's just be upfront about it. Why wouldn't you? It does seem like things were started to work after he got injured, unfortunately. Duran started to play better. Johnny Newton got more reps, started to play better. But yeah, we're talking about a Pro Bowl player here in John Allen, that if you can get him back on the field for a playoff run, yeah, you have to. And I don't know if it would disrupt much because you're getting a healthier body back out on the field now, so it helps your rotation. So let's just say it remains to be seen. I still have my doubts, but we'll see if it happens.
Okay, and I think it's a fact. I think Jonathan Allen smells playoffs and meaningful football, and that's not something he's ever been a part of here. And he's like, "Hey, if I'm on my way out, I'm leaving with something. I'm trying to play in that playoff game." That's what it feels like,
bro. So I didn't have to say anything because you just said it. That's very astute of you, my friend.
A whole lot of FOMO, whole lot of FOMO coming,
bro. Hell yeah! Do you think if I've been in a dungeon for the last 3-4 years and I have a chance to peek my head up and see some light, and I'm not? Of course I am. So yeah, I think he's got a taste of this is different, man, and I haven't even really been part of it. So I want to be part of this thing. And obviously naturally feels like he can help them too, I'm sure. So the question is, do they feel like he'll be able to help them? Because I had predicted that he had played his last game in Washington,
so did I
when he got injured. But I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again in the future. But I thought under the circumstances, I thought he was going to be out for the season. And if he were to be out for the season, I still would say he played his last game in Washington. But we'll see now if that holds to be true.
It's just interesting timing that now we're hearing it was only a partially torn pec and stuff like that. That sounds like I haven't played in real playoff. Like that 2020 playoff game, we shouldn't have been in the playoffs that year. He's like, this is the first time this team has actually been good since I've been drafted here.
Yeah.
I got to be a part of it. I ain't mad at John Allen for trying to get back on the football field. And I thought it was surprising when I was watching Lattimore practice footage. I'm like, is that John Allen back there conditioning with his jersey and stuff?
Yeah.
I didn't expect to see that from a guy who was said to be out for the season in practice uniform.
And the other thing is, when you look at guys like Sheldon Day, he's played well.
He brings the best energy in that room.
That's what I'm saying. So when you see guys like Sheldon Day playing well, and then Johnny Newton, the rookie, ascending each week, and then you see a guy like Carl Davis Jr. getting on the field that they brought in off the street. If you're John Allen, you clearly are saying to yourself, I'm better than those guys, at least at this point in my career. I can be out there helping them and they're winning. But if this was a train wreck of a season like we've seen in years past,
There'd be
make
no
no
point.
mistake about it, there'd be no John Allen coming back.
You would not see him out there with a practice jersey on running wind sprints. You would not see that if the 2023 season was taking place in front of our eyes. Newly acquired receiver KJ Osborn. Were you able to see much of him out on the field with the team last week?
Just out running routes, doing drills, conditioning, things of that nature. We did get a chance to talk to him, and he said he was excited. Excited for the opportunity. And the first thing that hit me just hearing him talk, very professional, very like a clear veteran. He actually reminded me a little bit of Noah as far as just.
I'm telling people we replaced Noah with Noah.
Yeah. Like you know your role, you know your expectation. You're not coming here to catch touchdowns and be the number one option. No, he knows that's Terry, but I think he also knows that he's got a little bit more than anybody else on the roster, a wide receiver from an experience standpoint. And this guy has had some success in the NFL. I mean, he had success in Minnesota. He had success in New England briefly. So he's a guy that still has a lot of football left in the tank. And I think if you're Washington, compared to what we saw in New Orleans, you have to have some kind of gimmicky plays at times in order to get Dayami the ball. Luke didn't really get the looks that I thought he was going to get in this game, against New Orleans. So I think, you need that other guy opposite Terry that has, just the route tree that has an understanding of how defenses are playing them. And I think that you'll see him be on the field against Philadelphia for sure.
I think you're going to see him lined up starting opposite Terry as soon as he's
Probably.
up to speed with the offense, because now, like, we need him to catch touchdowns, like, because other than Terry,
all of them too.
Terry, he's the only receiver on our roster with touchdown production. In Minnesota, he had touchdown production for his first 3 years. He just couldn't get on the field in New England. Like, for whatever reason, they were playing Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, and the other guy, Pop Douglas, ahead of him.
Well, I think that was just because they're, new coach, and Mayo probably just wanted the younger guys on the roster receiver just to develop with Drake May. So that's what you have going forward. So Bourne was definitely the odd man out there. It's very similar to Noah Brown in Houston. The same thing. You have all those young receivers in Houston that are developing with Stroud, with CJ. So, you saw that Noah was the odd man out, not because he couldn't play. It was just the circumstances. So I think for Washington to be able to get KJ in, I think he's a guy that can give you some added production that you need.
I mean, you claimed him, you brought him in here, and you've shown us what you think about Luke McCaffrey at this point. With no Noah Brown on Sunday, he had 1 target for 0 yards on 12 snaps. So you let us know where Luke stands in the wide receiver room. So I expect to see a ton of KJ Osborn as soon as he's up to speed with the offense.
Yeah, and the thing is that he made it known, when he talked to us, that he's a hard worker, a grinder. He said he's always working, always trying to learn stuff. So I think, a veteran player like that will catch on to an offense really quick. And I think you having that week of just preparation, the first week, and now having a full second week leading up into the game Sunday, I'd be shocked if he's not out there maybe first 2-3 plays of the game if you don't see him out on the field.
Yep. And I told a lot of people this is Noah Brown minus a few inches of height and more touchdown production. So
a little bit faster too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely got a step or two faster, shorter, more touchdown production, Noah Brown. So it's pretty much a push to bring him in. And knowing what this wide receiver room lacks, we're going to need him to actually step up for us down the stretch. And I know he's happy that he just left that terrible Patriots team to come play for a team that has playoff aspirations, which segues us to our last couple minutes of the show. Washington is in the 7th spot. We may see some movement in the first 3 slots because the Vikings have a chance to be the first seed in the entire conference. The Lions are banged up, and we got the Eagles this week. The Eagles are on fire. They could end up with the first seed. 3 games left. Washington is 1 win and like an Atlanta loss away from clinching a playoff spot. How do you think we finish down this 3-game stretch?
I'm gonna just predict it now. I think they go 2-1 down the stretch. Not gonna say who they beat because I just but I'm giving the record 2-1.
I agree.
Most people are gonna assume it's Philly that they lose to. Not so sure about that.
This team is weird. We will go ahead and beat Philly and then lose to Atlanta the following week. We're a weird squad.
Or win the next 2 and lose to Dallas. So
right.
I think for the money though, this is a game that is more of a barometer game again. You're playing against a team that right now I think is the best team in the NFC playing wise, the Eagles. And that's over a slight margin over Minnesota because Minnesota's they look great. They do
look really good on both sides.
But I saw Darnold throw some balls last night that should have been picked off by Chicago.
Because he still is Sam Darnold. He just has that O'Connell filter over him right now.
He does. He still puts them out there for to be had. So I'm going to give the edge to the Eagles, but I'm going to say this. By the end of the season, Detroit might be the 3 seed. I'm sorry, might be the 5 seed because Minnesota might win the division. The Eagles obviously win the NFC East more than likely, and then you start to think Detroit, man, the team that was riding high all year, they're just besieged by injuries right now. So if you're Washington, this game against Philly might be more of a barometer game to see how you fare against one of the league's best. Again, you have an opportunity to show if you can beat one. But I think the most important game coming up is the week after against the Falcons. It's a playoff game. You beat the Falcons, you're in. Simple as that. So that's what it's going to come down to. So, yeah, man, it's going to be tough, Rio, but we're at 9 wins, and you've never seen that either. The most wins after 14 games going since 92, the year they won the Super Bowl.
Crazy.
If you win one of these next 3, you get to 10 wins. That's double-digit wins. That's another great sign. But we know what the mark is that we both want to see. You want to get them to 11, knock that 33-year run off the table. And if they can get to 11 wins, and I boldly will predict that they will be the 5 seed at that point. I'm sorry,
the 6 seed. The 6 seed
because Detroit probably will be the 5.
The 6 seed is going to be important when the Vikings play the Packers, and that game impacts us because that's the game. That's the only game I can see the Packers dropping. And the NFC is wide open. It feels like any of these, it feels like the Packers, they could get to the Super Bowl. The Vikings could, but if I'm gonna take a puncher's chance in the first round, I think I want us going to Minnesota. If there's some way Minnesota can get the 2nd seed, send us to that dome with Sam Darnold on the other side of the field.
See, it's tough, man. Minnesota's a tough one. That's a tough one. I'm kind of thinking Green Bay's the one you want.
But they're wild card though. We're not going to see them.
Yeah.
But Minnesota right. With the 2nd seed, I'm telling you, man.
You do not want Philly, man. Because
I'm cool.
It could shape up to the point where, let's just say Detroit holds on to this thing. That's the problem. You need Detroit to keep losing to in order for you to get what you want. You kind of need Detroit to lose some games, man, because would you rather have Washington going to Detroit for a playoff game or going to Minnesota?
I'm trying to go in a dome. I'm trying to go in the Lions are banged up. Send me to a dome against Jared Goff. I know they're like that. They're nasty, and we don't have what they have right now, but give me Jayden in his first playoff game in a controlled weather environment with a team's defense that's not as nasty as the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not ducking Philly, but I'm ducking Philly. Let me see
I don't
Philly in
want
the
Philly.
second round.
Yeah,
And
I
let me
don't
see
want
them in
Philly.
the divisional round.
Right, exactly. I don't. Yeah, we don't want that. Let's just be honest about that. And I know the odds are in your favor, in Washington's favor, because it would be the third time they played a team in the same division. And history has shown most teams, who are the better team, if they play an upstart for the third time, they're in trouble. That's normally what happens. Don't want to see that just yet, though.
Perfect best case scenario. The Packers lose to the Vikings in a couple weeks. We hop in the 6th spot and we get to play either the Buccaneers or the Rams. Lord, it would be must-see TV if Mike Evans versus Marshon Lattimore in the first round of the playoffs.
Now you're talking. That's the scenario that I want.
That's what we need.
I would love for Washington to be playing Tampa, because they didn't play well at all the first game in the Jayden Daniels, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters era, but they still were in that football game late in the third quarter, and it was brutally hot. I just feel like, Tampa's one of those teams too now, to not sleep on them.
Yep.
The games they lost this year, they lost by a couple points in those games. They've been in every game, and we saw what they just did to the Chargers on Sunday. They destroyed them out there in LA. So they're not something to sleep on.
They're not.
I think from a matchup standpoint, that would be good for Washington. And you're right. My God, how much would you want to see Mike Evans, Marshon Lattimore in a playoff setting? God.
I said you pretty much need to treat it like a hockey game and just let them box at midfield at the start of the game. And that's not saying we are on the Buccaneers level, but I think we're closer to that than Detroit and Philadelphia. While Minnesota is going crazy, I would take my chance with them out of the top 3 teams that I just talked about. But Tampa, Rams, those are teams that are better than us. That's what I would like to see for our first playoff game. But beggars cannot be choosers, and we were 4-13 last year. I will take whoever we get as long as we punch our ticket. We got 3 chances to punch our ticket to the playoffs coming up. Philly's back in town. We owe them. We're going to see what this team is made of, not coming off of a 4 days rest after playing the Steelers prior to. We're going to see what this team is made of coming to town. I'll get into that game more later this week. I'm pretty sure you'll do the same. Let folks know where they can find you on our way out.
Sure. Appreciate it. You can check me out on social media, Lake Lewis Jr. You can also subscribe to my podcast, The Lake Lewis Jr. Show. It's available on YouTube where you can watch it, or you can go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of the podcast carriers and audio. It's on there as well. And then you can check out sportsjourney.com, where some of my folks are doing some great work on there. And then on occasion, you can obviously check me out locally on ABC, post-game, breaking down what happened with the Washington Commanders.
Yep, that's my guy, Lake. Make sure y'all follow him up, subscribe, all that good stuff. Keep up the good work, my brother, and let us know anything we need to know coming out of Ashburn this week. That's all we got for right now. Hail to the Washington Commanders. One more win left should punch our ticket. We got 3 chances at doing so. Let's get it in, y'all. We out.